Hello, my name is Andy and I am the village idiot, and I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to Newark and Sherwood, and today we're on the banks of the Trent yet again. There it is in all its glory over there. We'll get a little bit closer to that as we journey around the parish of Carlton on Trent. Just to the south of Sutton on Trent is the much smaller but no less historic and interesting Carlton on Trent. This is located between the River Trent and the A1 road near Newark in Nottinghamshire. The population of the civil parish was 228 at the 2001 census, increasing marginally to 229 at the 2011 census. It used to be like Sutton on Trent on the Great North Road, and some of the buildings here give that away. In fact, Carlton is famous for a few reasons, not least of which is a rhyme that we'll see shortly on the side of one of its most iconic and recognisable buildings. Gentlemen, as you pass by, upon this shoe pray cast an eye. If it be too straight, I'll make it wider. I'll ease the horse and please the rider. If lame from shoeing, as they often are, you may have them eased with the greatest care. The rhyme is almost identical to one that can be seen on a huge horseshoe at Gonalston Forge, another Newark and Sherwood parish a lot further south. Okay, so here we're at the farmstead Old Bell Lane. Now, as you can see, this is a private road, but it's also a public footpath. I've seen this a few times before, where a private road is actually also a public footpath. It's weird. I don't understand how both can be the same thing, but it's a public footpath, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with walking down here. Let's go. The village has several entries in the Domesday Book, mainly for the year 1086, relating to the records of the Exchequer. Associated names for these entries include the Earl Tosty and Roger de Bully, who we've talked about so many times before, as he's better known as Roger de Busley. A parochial school was erected here in 1848 and 1849, and Carlton became a separate modern civil parish in December 1866. Now, I'm getting a keen eye these days for certain buildings. This one here is interesting, isn't it? Now, this may have been a chapel, I'm going to guess, by the shape of the former windows, which have now been bricked up. It's interesting. The Great War Bulletin for December the 7th, 1914 tells us that two men of Carlton on Trent, Frederick Naylor, a blacksmith, and H.H. Bruin, a butcher, had been appointed as special constables to assist the police force in the event of a German invasion. The second man may have been Harold H. Brewitt. Now, speaking of names, watch out in this episode for a couple which would shape the modern day Carlton on Trent into what it is. Joseph Pocklington is one of them, who had a major hand in some of the buildings here. Another name to watch out for is the Vere Lorry, or just Vere family, who owned land in Carlton on Trent, Sutton on Trent, Ossington, Cromwell, Norwell and Willoughby. They were a big deal indeed. They would purchase this estate from Joseph Pocklington in 1833. There's a history with horses here too, and you get that impression straight away by looking at the village sign, which shows two horses and a horseshoe. Ironic then that another name associated with Carlton is GG Place. If you don't see the humour, a GG is a slang term for a horse. Place was the architect behind the current church. Carlton on Trent Parish Council's website has an absolute goldmine of historic images. It's linked below. Some of them have made it to today's picture bit. Okay, so here's another road which looks suspiciously private, but it is a public footpath. And this one, I'm not sure where it goes. I've kind of modified my route here, because if this leads to the River Trent, it'll help me out later. I was pleased to find out that pretty quickly the footpath went over this stile and out into a meadow, which gave me some pretty good views of the Trent. The Trent skirts close enough to Carlton for me to be able to catch it here, something that I wasn't able to do in Sutton-on-Trent. I was glad too, as there's some more history to be spoken about here later. So it's always good, if you're going to attempt to walk around a village like this that's got a lot of footpaths, it's always good to have a good knowledge of how to read a map, because you can easily get lost. I was trying to follow the footpath. Initially I went over there because that's where I thought it went. Didn't. It just ran into a dead end. So it appears now it's walking across this meadow to the bank of the Trent, and that does make sense because you can see, look, there is a line on the ground. It looks like it's been a well-trodden path. Demographics time. Carlton covers an area of 3.7 square kilometres, which gives it a population density of 59.96. All of the 229 people who live here identify as white British, a full 100% according to the latest stats. A fairly high proportion of those are of retired age too, some 32.3%, and for the first time in a while we see a parish which is less than 50% of working age. The average house in Carlton is pretty pricey. It comes in at £419,000. Bus services through Carlton-on-Trent include the 37A and the 339 seen here at this bus stop. The Bus Times website lists a few more, one of which is a school service to Tuxford. We haven't seen one of these for a while. Carlton-on-Trent's old red phone box is a book exchange. It's always good to find these. Now, in case you were wondering what happened to the former Carlton-on-Trent school mentioned earlier, wonder no more. It's now the village hall, located on the old Great North Road. White's Directory of Nottinghamshire from 1853 records Carlton once had a chapel, a small ancient building with a brick tower annexed to the vicarage of Norwell. It was pulled down in 1850 and a new church dedicated to St Mary was consecrated on the 11th of June 1851. And this is that church. G.G. Place is buried in this very churchyard. Easily one of the most beautiful churches we've seen, it's a neat stone building in the early middle pointed style and consists of a chancel and a tower that's 18 feet square and 66 feet high. James Vere presented 8 stained glass windows to the church at various times, including the large chancel window, and in around 1871 he financed the addition of the spire on the tower at a cost of about £1,000. You can see why I chose this as a location for an episode of the Parish Notice Board a few weeks ago, can't you? Here's the River Trent, which has a lot of history in these parts. Carlton used to have a ferry that operated across the river. Besthorpe is the nearest village on the other side. Being located on the Trent, it may come as no surprise to learn that Carlton had a wharf, and in a few moments we'll see some of the old buildings. But first, back into the village briefly. Now, how about this for a landmark? When I first got to Carlton-on-Trent, I had a look at the village sign and it displays a horseshoe, and I've just found what it actually means. Here at the old forge, take a look at this. This is quite amazing. That's brilliant, isn't it? And here is that rhyme. The forge was originally built as a 4-bedroomed house in the 18th century, but was used as a smithy and shoeing forge as early as 1764, when it was owned by the Cartwright family of Ossington, who in that year leased it to Joseph Pocklington. Back on the wharf now, as we head up Ferry Lane, this building would appear to be the offices of Robert Teal, Trent Gravel Limited. In the past, it's likely this building was the wharf office or was part of the wharf in some way on the River Trent. Now, we've seen wharfs on the River Trent before, of course we have, but I didn't know there was one here, and I thought I knew this place. Amazing. So there was at one time a wharf right here on the River Trent. Further research told me that this wharf was Carlton Gravel Wharf, and barges used to navigate the Trent from here to Keadby in North Lincolnshire. Also here, there's a former windmill. Carlton Mill was a 6-storey brick tower windmill built before 1821. The tower is still standing as a shell without floors to a height of 60 feet. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what you'll find behind these brick walls at the northern end of the village, opposite the church. These belong to Carlton Hall, a fine Georgian country house built in 1765. There was an earlier house on or near the site of the current house. The Vere Lorry family have called this their home since 1832. It's attributed to John Johnson, but Historic England suggests it was possibly built by Joseph Pockington for himself. This here is the stable block in the northeastern corner of the premises. If you come to Carlton-on-Trent, you literally cannot miss this. It's not often you get this close to a former country house on a public road. This is the carriage entrance to the house off Church Lane. It's listed Grade 2. In the grounds of the hall is a walled garden, known as the nursery, which takes up almost 1 acre. And here's a nice landmark to finish our main walk around with. This is a bench donated by Carlton's Parish Council in 1996. I'll tell you what, for such a small village, there ain't half some fantastic property out here. Some amazing buildings, good to see. Okay, I am done with my main walk around Carlton-on-Trent, but we're not finished yet. I need to take the car out towards the A1 now, because there's something else we need to catch before we leave. But before I do that, time for the picture bit. Here it comes right now. Now we're out to the west of the village along the road towards Ossington and Neasel. Check out this old fingerpost sign. Carlton's only pub is out here. This is the Great Northern Inn. Cromwell Lake is less than 2 miles away from this and is a popular fishing spot. I imagine many an angler calls in to this pub. There's a big industrial area here too, which stretches north into Sutton-on-Trent. This is the base of Caledonian. They're a construction company and they build modular buildings. There's also a small caravan park out here. This is Carlton Manor Caravan Park. It's residential primarily, although judging by this sign, there's also some space for tourers as well. It's situated right across from the pub and right next to the main thing we've come to see out here. The East Coast Main Line once again makes an appearance on the channel. There used to be a station here situated about 1 mile from the village on the Ossington Road. Trains were very frequent, departing several times a day from here. The station was opened as Carlton in 1852 by the Great Northern Railway. On-Trent was added to its name in 1881. It closed to both passengers and goods traffic on the 2nd of March 1953. A man named John Ellis was the station master. The aforementioned photo archive has some amazing pictures of how the station used to look, and of the old signal box. These days it's little more than just a crossing where there's now a newer, much larger signal box. There are plenty of trains still though, but they just whoosh past. Now there's a reason why I left this part of the parish till last, because out here there's a junction. This road joins the A1 and that's my route home. So I'm going to put the camera on the dashboard and we'll drive down to the junction and head up the A1 back up to glorious sunny Rotherham. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and this has been the parish of Carlton-on-Trent, and I'm out. Now, as someone who spent a lot of time in and around Retford in the past, you always take the risk when you're close to the East Coast Main Line of crossing the railway, not knowing how lucky you're going to be getting back to the other side quickly. As such, I found myself waiting for a while to film this last shot. You do get a bonus Hull train service though, flying through shot shortly.